Every single one of your offers, you need to be doing like a step 2 counter with creative finance. I'll give you an example. Johnny's got one right now where they were asking 180, he offered 140, and they countered at 160. So they came 20 grand down off of their ask price. So I told Johnny to go back and say, hey, for cash, I can't pay 160. I got to be at 140. But if the seller was willing to wait to get somewhere all of his money, I might be able to pay 160. The agent was like, well, what do you mean? So then the next question is, does he have a loan? Because you need to know that if you're going to offer subject to or seller finance.
Mm-hmm.
Subject to means there's an existing loan. Seller finance means they own it free and clear.
Okay.
So if they say, no, he owns it free and clear, then you say, okay, if he was willing to do seller finance, I might be able to pay 160.
Okay. And why does
And
that
then,
work?
well, because again, the price doesn't matter, the terms matter.
Okay. So what terms would we want?
Well, then we would put it in our calculator and we'd figure out like what pencils. And when I say pencils, I mean we would look at the rent, we'd figure out what interest rate we need to be at, how much down we could do, and
Okay.
we
So then we would take out a loan.
No. So let me show you one that I did with Johnny. He's got an offer out right now for creative finance. And the agent said, I'll present it. I'll go present it to the seller. Okay, so follow the math with me. If you offer 90,000 and you put 9,000 down, the balance on the loan would be 81,000, right?
Yeah.
So 90 minus 9 is 81. So now the seller is going to finance this on his own
I thought
property.
you said that the seller didn't have a loan.
He doesn't. You're creating a new one.
Okay.
The seller's financing it. So the seller's acting as the bank now
Okay, I get it
on
now.
his own property. But what are all your fees? Well, he wants some money down. So you're going to put 9,000 down, which is 10%. You're going to pay a couple $1,000s in closing fees. You're going to wholesale this. So your buyer's going to be paying your wholesale fee of 10 grand. So then you have 21,000 in cash to get into the deal, which is 21% of your total purchase. So your total purchase is 102 for your buyer, right? Because remember, he's buying it for 90, he's paying you 10, another 2 in closing. So his total investment, your buyer, is 102,000 on this deal, but he's only got to come up with 21,000 in cash to get into the deal. 10 of that goes to you, 9 of it to the seller, and 2 of it to closing.
Okay.
That's how we structure the deal. But now let's look at the loan. So we have a loan of 81,000 with the seller. Okay, well, what's our interest rate? Well, let's put it at 6%. Let's say it's on a 30-year loan, which is typical. And some of these have balloons, which means the balance is owed in full after a period of time. So like you have a $81,000 loan over 30 years, but after 5 years, you got to pay off whatever's left. So they
Okay.
call that a balloon payment. It's basically, they don't want to stay in the deal for the full 30 years. So after 5 years, you'd have to pay it off. You'd have to sell it and pay it off, or refinance and pay it off. So that means that payment is $485
Monthly.
on an $81,000 loan at 6%. Well, what if we put it at 5%? Your payment just dropped to $434 a month. We play with stuff to see what we're going to come in at. Okay, so that's the debt service. Let's go back up here now. Johnny's property was renting at $1,350. So we comped it, we found rentals. We're like, okay, $1,350. Well, we want to factor in a management fee of 10%. I like to put in 5% in reserves and 5% in vacancy. So maintenance reserve and vacancy reserve. And then insurance is going to be like $100 a month. And then whatever the property tax, I forget what they were, like $140 a month or something like that. So this is the percentage of your rent. We have a management fee, we have a maintenance reserve, we have insurance and taxes and vacancy. Those are like your main things on a rental. And then at the bottom here, that means your net operating income is $835 because you're subtracting your fees off of your gross rent. So this drops down here your cash flow. So we make $835, but then I got to pay my seller finance loan of $435.
Okay.
So that
makes $400 a month.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Like a buy and hold guy's like $400 a month after everything.
Yeah.
So then that means his cash on cash return is 23%.
That's way cool.
Because he's making $4,800 a year. That's good. On a $21,000 cash investment. Because remember, he put 21,000 down to get into this deal, and he's making $5 grand a year. So that return on his cash investment is what we call cash on cash. Anything double digit is usually attractive.
Oh, really? Okay.
So this deal structured this way is an easy wholesale because a buy and hold guy is like, I can get into this deal with no qualifying, no banks, and I can make $400 a month net, like true net. I'm in. And I only got to come up with 20 grand to get into the deal. Yeah, you guys got to learn how to fill these out. And it's just the green cells are formulas, so don't ever override those. These add up and do all the math for you.
Well, should we punch in my property?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's do yours. Down here, I have a tab called sub 2.
Well, sub 2 is when they don't have a loan.
That's where you're taking over their loan. That's already in place.
So the one we were doing is when they don't have a loan and we make them be the bank.
And you make a new loan.
Yeah.
So if seller finances, you're making a new loan subject to is
We just don't know right now with mine if they have a loan or not.
But there's a good chance he's got a loan because most retail people do. But let's make up numbers. Let's say that he's got a loan of 182.
Okay.
Reinstatement legal would be if he's behind on payments and you got to catch up payments, which is common. Let's say we have 12,000 in commissions. Let's say we've got 3,000 in closing fees. Let's say you want to make 15,000 on an assignment. Let's say we're going to give that seller 5,000 in cash. We'll leave the improvements out for now, but sometimes I'll add in the cost to do the paint and carpet. So total is 215. That's adding everything up. Let's put this at 0. We're not going to do a seller finance. So you need 35 cash to get into that deal. Where's the 35 cash coming? 12,000 in commissions to the agent, 3,000 in closing fees, 15,000 in assignment, and 5,000 to the seller. So even though it's creative finance, you still need some cash to put the deal together because you got to pay everybody, right?
How do you do this with your students? Like you would be the person to provide with that?
No, we're going to wholesale it.
You don't physically need the 35.
Your buyer's going to do it.
The buyer's going to, okay.
So your entry fee is your total cash to get into the deal.
Okay.
And we need 35,000. When I say we,
so we can go to a buyer and be like, if you have 35K, you can have this deal.
35K, you get this nice brick 2-car garage built in 2019.
Yeah.
For 35 grand, right? Yeah. It's very attractive. People jump on these.
Yeah.
So then let's look at our loan now. Let's say that his loan of 180 is at a 4% rate. On a 30-year, he's got 25 years remaining. That means his payment is $859 a month. Now that's just principal and interest. Now we know what his payment is, $859. And let's say that that house rents for $1,800. What do you think that rents for?
I feel like it could rent for $2 grand.
Go back through these, make your management fee 10%, make your maintenance fee 5%. Your insurance is usually around $100 a month for property insurance. Maybe that's more because it's a little bit higher end home, 120. Property taxes are probably going to be around 150. Like this stuff I verify. Like I would go back on Zillow and it'll tell you what the taxes are. And then you want this also at 5%. So typically this number right here is going to be between 60 and 70, which means you're factoring in about 30% in cost on a rental. So then that means you take 2,000, you subtract out your fees, you have a net operating income of 1,330. But remember, you got to subtract debt service, which is your loan over here of 859, which means that thing's cash flowing 471 a month, which means this thing's got a cash on cash of 16%, which is great.
Yeah.
Because it's making $5,600 a year on a $35,000 cash investment. So again, anytime you can get your cash on cash over 10%, that's what buy and hold guys like to see. So you got double digit cash on cash. You got 16% entry fee, which is really good. And the reason why that's good is because if this guy were to buy this and get a investor loan, like go to the bank and get a loan, he would have to put 25 to 30% down is what they require on an investment loan. And he's got to qualify with credit and all that and tax returns and everything. And he gets an 8% rate right now.
Yeah.
Or
doesn't work.
He only puts 16% down, doesn't have to qualify with a bank, and he takes over a 4% loan. See how much better of a deal this is than if he were to buy this and get bank financing?
Yeah.
It's a killer. And then you make $15,000 and you're paying a total of $215. So you're paying over value. Because remember, value is $205. So why would an investor pay $215,000 to get into this deal when that's upside down? It's more than the value. because the terms are attractive. If we're going the cash model, there's no way we could pay 225.
Yeah.
We got to pay we got to pay 140 or whatever it was cash. See
So
the
now I gotta
difference?
find out how motivated the seller is. See if he needs cash or if he's okay with getting payments.
So here's what you do. See, go back and say, I will pay full price of 205 if the seller will let me take over his loan.
Okay.
And I'll bring the money to pay the commissions, closing fees, and put some cash in the seller's pocket. Because think about it this way. Let's say that he sells it for 195 to you cash.
Yeah.
He's going to pay about 8% in commissions and closing fees, which is 15,000. So that 195 is really 180. So let's say he owes 180. He's going to walk away with nothing after he pays off his loan.
Yeah.
So he could sell it for 195 and get nothing, or let you take over the loan and at least he gets $5,000 in his pocket. See why it's compelling? Like, it's a good argument to make.
So he'd get the $5,000, but then he would also get monthly payments, right?
No, he gets nothing because remember, this loan is existing to a bank. So when we take this over, we're paying 907 to the bank, not the seller. The seller finance one, it goes to the seller because he's the bank.
Okay.
Remember, seller financing, there's no loan in place. So we make a new loan that goes to the seller. Subject to is there's already a lender, a bank somewhere, and the money goes to the bank. But the seller gets to walk away. They get $5,000 in their pocket.
If this was a cash deal, then he would get that money and just have to give it right over to the bank.
Yeah, he'd have to give because he owes money to the bank. So he has to pay the bank off.
Yeah.
He gets nothing.
He gets nothing. But this way he gets $5,000.
Yeah, and that's assuming that he owed, 180 or whatever. He might, if he owes 160 or 150, he would get more money in his pocket if he sells it outright. So what you're hoping that he's got a loan for like around 180 to 190, and then subject to is a very appealing offer.
And since
don't ever say subject to. No one knows what that means. Just say take over the payments. And don't ever say assume the loan. We're not assuming the loan. Assume the loan means you move it out of his name and put it in your name. We're actually leaving the loan in his name and we're just taking it over.
Yeah.
With subject to. Big difference.
Do you directly pay the bank or do you pay him?
Yeah, you directly pay the bank. No, don't pay him. Yeah. So what you'll do is you'll set up automated payments that go directly to the bank.
Yeah, cool.
And he doesn't miss a beat. Like next month's payment's made. He's out, he moves out, he goes on with life, and you now control the property.
Okay, sweet. I will call them back and ask them how much they have on their loan. Ask if I can take it over. I'll tell them that I'll cover all closing fees.
Full price offer.
Full price offer. Okay.
Full price offer if I can take over the payment, the loan.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.